A new ice age has begun on Earth. All space is covered with nothing but ice, which leaves cold, including the soul. The global temperature continues to fall, and there is no sign that the fall will stop. However, the man on the other side of the screen advises not to lose hope. And why would the man make such a comforting prediction? The presenter only answers that the government has not forgotten about the inhabitants, so humanity will be able to overcome this crisis. The reporter wants to give one more piece of advice, advising us together. But he doesn't have time to finish because the monitor screen is covered with ice from the monstrous cold and the connection on the other side is interrupted, leaving only interference. Someone knocks on the apartment of the guy who had a TV set showing the news and calls his name. The guy's name is Hanfeng. He looks through the peephole and notices that there is a girl he knows who is cold. Since it's an acquaintance, he opens the door and asks her. The girl's name is Hyena. He asks the girl why she came to see him. And because of that, he tells her to go inside, because it is dangerous outside. The girl kisses the guy out of the blue. He's always wanted to do that, but it was too sudden for him. Hanfeng asks the girl why she kissed him as soon as he opened the door, and what had gotten into her in the first place that she suddenly did it. All the while, his voice was shaking. The girl suddenly admits that she has realized that she really loves Hanfeng, that he's the one she should be with, that you have to go through a crisis like this to see the true face of a person, to realize who really cares for you, who will be there for you no matter what. All the while she pauses, for she is very cold. The girl says that if he doesn't believe her, let him feel her heartbeat. She is even willing to do anything to the guy. From these words, the guy's brain has finally shut down, his legs are trembling, his face is red. The guy admits to her that she has no idea how much the girl's words mean to him. However, now, he was about to continue, but the girl interrupted him and also asked him to close his eyes. The guy says his eyes are closed, so what will she do now? Meanwhile, someone's hand appears on the door, and a man jumps out and stabs the poor and naive guy who is only guilty of liking the girl. The girl asks her accomplice if he killed the guy or if he's still alive, but the accomplice tells her not to pretend innocence because she knew from the beginning that the guy had to go. Deep down, she knew it. The world has been hell for a long time. Just because there were fewer mouths wouldn't change anything. While the poor guy lay in a pool of blood, betrayed and insignificant, the accomplices went to check out his lair. The other guy wants to see what Hanfeng has hidden in his hideout. If they play their cards right, they can survive until someone rescues them. The guy is still alive and has heard it all. He can't move, he's dying. Now he realizes towards the end of his life what it's like to die. He even sees the girl say, they don't have to do it now. They'll do it later. And the man just points out that she's a little varmint, so he'll have to reward the girl for the performance she put on. Hanfeng only thinks that it's all the fault of this cold-blooded woman who took his life. His last thought, however, was that if there was going to be a next life, he would definitely stop being a puppy in love, because that's what ruined him in this dangerous world. At this, his eyes closed. Suddenly, Hanfeng opened his eyes from some bright light that disturbs him. He didn't realize what was the light in front of his eyes. That light seemed like a very warm light that he wanted to reach for. It even seemed to him that this was the way to heaven that he had heard about. His hand touched the light, and the light began to spread through his body, until he was all lit up and dissolved, as if bursting into flames. With a scream, he tore forward even as he found his body. But it turned out he just stood up abruptly in the bed and sat up. He was in his warm bed. The guy didn't realize where he was at all. After about 30 minutes, he managed to regain consciousness. After all, he had been living in his shelter for a long time and had completely forgotten about what the sun was, and only knew the cold. That's why he thought it was so warm. He thought he would never be able to feel warm again. He looked at the date and found that today was June 28th. With difficulty, he remembered the date of the apocalypse. The apocalypse began on July 15th. He was supposed to die, but he returned to his time half a month before the apocalypse began. So what does that mean? Is he reborn or something? But this time something was different. Something strange had happened that he couldn't explain. Ever since he woke up, he'd noticed a red glow. A red glow enveloped the entire wrist of his right hand. It didn't hurt. He didn't feel anything. The only thing he felt was a sensation of warmth coming from his hand. From this he concluded that the glow didn't do anything else. At first he thought he was imagining it. Who in their right mind wouldn't be surprised that his hand was glowing red? Suddenly, apparently it was cool after all, the guy sneezed. But what happened next surprised him even more. After he sneezed, his hand changed its color and turned green, and further why the glow on his hand started getting stronger and stronger. So he left the balcony in a flash and tried to catch his breath in his apartment. Rays of light literally burst out of his hand. The guy even wonders, how can science substantiate this? Just then, he starts to notice that the light from his hand is starting to diminish. Somehow this green light is erratic. The light is decreasing and increasing. The green light is not at all like the previous one, which was red. Suddenly, his legs went under and he unknowingly sat down on the couch. The guy felt completely devastated. This sudden fatigue makes the guy make an assumption that it seems to have something to do with the use of the green light. Han Feng starts waving his right hand intensely, hoping that the green light will disappear. He doesn't realize what the hell this is all about. But then he stops abruptly, for the first thought that comes to him is that he's seen this somewhere before. It's just like those manhwa stories he's read. It gives him confidence, and he gets into a pompous pose. Because the protagonist of such stories is always reborn with cheetah powers. After a moment, all the pathos fades, and he thinks it doesn't seem to be working. I have my suspicions that it wasn't a manhwa, but a manga actually. His pose and the way he picked up the blade, well, the sword in his fantasy. Did Han Feng really want to shout out to Bankai but got embarrassed? Apparently this little prototype, Zangetsu, didn't answer his call. Han Feng should learn from Ichigo. He was shouting all sorts of things in training with Urahara. Suddenly his stomach rumbled, snapping him out of his thoughts. He was too hungry. Looking for something to eat, Feng headed for the refrigerator. But looking inside the fridge, he found that there was nothing left. The guy is getting worse and worse. He is even covered in cold sweat. Feng thinks that his condition is very bad, and if he doesn't eat something now, he will pass out. Finally, while he's standing near the refrigerator, his eyes land on a jar standing on the table. As it turns out, it was refried soybeans, his leftover snack before the apocalypse. It hardly qualifies as a full meal, but it'll do for now for him. But later, he's going to go to the supermarket and do some shopping. With his right hand, which glows with a green glow, he picks up one bean and throws it into his mouth. However, there is a small explosion, accompanied by a mist, and in his mouth is no longer a tiny bean, but a whole plant. After taking the root of the plant out of his mouth, the guy notices that the plant is a soybean. He also no longer feels tired. In addition, from the positive, he notices that the green light is gone. He wonders if it has something to do with soybeans. After looking at the plant a bit, he discovers that it is ripe and there are bean sprouts. It turns out that this is what his new ability is. This is an incredible discovery that he plans to explore further. Right now, however, there is one most important thing that must not be postponed under any circumstances. He needs to stock up on supplies before the end of the world comes. The streets, as always, were full of people who were going about their business. No one even suspected that the apocalypse was coming soon. A guy walking along the road to the supermarket, trying to make sense of what happened. First, a red glow appeared around his hand, then it turned green. The green glow then decreasing, then increasing, making his heart rate increase and making him feel tired. Then he touched the soybeans with his glowing hand and they turned into sprouts. Looking at his right hand, he was still trying to realize what kind of ability he had gotten. Suddenly, he was called out by someone calling his name. It was the beautiful girl we've seen before. She wonders what a coincidence it is that they met like this. And he is also going shopping. The girl even dares to say that it's like fate to run into him like this. The guy is too shocked. He hasn't really thought about the whole situation with her since he was reborn, so he didn't expect to meet her so soon. Poor guy. Hyena, the goddess of his dreams for 3 years. The guy was willing to do anything to make her happy. What he would do for that smile, even when he knew full well he was just a backup for her. But what he could never have foreseen or even thought about was that this girl who always smiled and for whom he was willing to do anything would be the cause of his death. He was instantly thrown into anger. He even had to touch his left hand to his right hand and ask himself to stay calm, because now was not the time for revenge. Not yet, not yet. He needed to provide himself with what he needed first. Hyena called out to him again. She had a worried look on her face. The girl wondered if the guy was all right, since she's been calling by name for a while now and he hasn't responded in any way. Who's the girl in the back with the ice cream and bunny ears? The guy apologizes because the girl looks especially beautiful today, so he's a little confused about the whole thing. Hyena's cheeks even turn a little red, and she asks him to stop. She even wonders since when he became so soft. And since they've met, maybe they should go shopping together. There's a Mickey Mouse to Hyena's left. The guy is no longer as easily fooled as he was before. So he walks past her, saying that he can't go out with her today. Even Hyena is shocked at this turn of events. How did this even happen? The guy only walks away in pathos from the surprised girl, and reflects on the fact that Hyena made a good attempt to use him as her personal ATM. But he's no longer as stupid as he was that time. Feng headed to the supermarket next. Waldemar in City A, an obvious reference to one major chain that is also in China. The biggest and well-stocked supermarket in the eastern region. You can get anything here. When the Ice Age came, the place was cleaned out overnight. No one ever found out who did it. He took the cart and began to pick out what he needed, thinking that he needed to stock up on everything he could before the apocalypse. In order to buy everything he needed and properly prepare, he opened the internet and found an article with a guide on how to prepare and what you need when the apocalypse comes. Food, winter clothing, medicine, essentials, fuel. There's a lot to prepare for. Prepare he should, but there's a very serious problem that's preventing him from doing so. He has only 15,357 and 5/10 of a yuan in his account. He doesn't understand how he can solve this problem. After all, there's no way he can prepare without it. But then it's as if his prayers have been answered. He receives a notification that his credit history for 2024 has been approved, and he can get a loan of up to 16,800 yuan. A light bulb immediately goes off in his head. How could he have forgotten about this? He immediately starts downloading a bunch of apps on his phone. There are many ways to get the loan, and he still doesn't have to return the credit when the apocalypse comes. Hyena, on the other hand, is kicking some jar at the same time. She's very upset about what Han Feng did. It's pissed her off so much. The guy is just one of the many jerks, and how dare a lowlife like him refuse her? A pathetic loser who doesn't even have a car. Let now not even expect her to be polite to him ever again. And as if in rebuttal to her words, that car that was driving behind Hyena when she said all that stuff about the guy is Han Feng's car. He says hello to the girl and stops to show her. He asks if it's his car, and the guy admits that this car is his and he just bought it. His father is in business in the US, so he wired him some money. Feng just dropped him off at the airport. The girl immediately realizes what's going on and plays out her act. It turns out that he drove his father to the airport, and that she is sorry that she asked the guy to go shopping with her without knowing it. The actress even cried. After all, he was so cold to her before, so he thought that maybe he decided to dump her as a friend. The guy says she's a stupid girl for thinking that. He then pulls her to him and grabs her chin, saying why would he dump Hyena since she's so important to him. The girl is just shocked at this guy's approach and then can't hide her sly smile. She says that Feng is special to her too, so she suggests him to have dinner and watch a movie tonight, because she wants to get to know him better. Because of what the guy thinks about it. But when she raised her eyes to look at the guy, there was only empty space in the guy's place. She is shocked by this behavior of the guy. He at this time went to his boxes in the trunk and informs the girl that he has to drive all those things in the trunk, so he is very busy. Hyena wonders from him why he bought so much stuff. The guy, on the other hand, informs her that it's nothing special, just a few things he likes. He also says that he bought a gift for the girl. She's fantasizing about her birthday present, but we can see from the guy's long nose that he's lying to her. Hyena says goodbye to the guy, saying that she will look forward to seeing them again, but for now she will go home. The guy only approves of this, saying to let her do so. The girl thinks about how she'd kill him for treating her that way. But the guy has a father in the US, and now has a car. He's kind of rich. The guy, on the other hand, just thinks that the most important thing is that Hyena doesn't find out about his little supplies he's collecting, because that's his ticket to surviving the apocalypse. In this cold, horrible and frightening world, let Hyena wait. When the end of the world comes, she'll get what she deserves. She and her accomplice. The man who helped the girl kill the guy will especially get what he deserves. Thinking about all this, Han Feng begins to look forward to the apocalypse. July 15th, the day it all begins. Heavy snow. The temperature will drop to -20 degrees Celsius. Over the next month, the temperature will gradually drop to -70 degrees Celsius. The world will be covered in ice and snow, making it impossible to go outside. Many passers-by marveled at his countless purchases and boxes. Food is something he has stocked up on. That's why he needs to stock up on enough food, and it all needs to be packed and sealed because he can't have the neighbors suspect that he is hoarding food. So he bought the boxes with the danger sign. The important supplies, he decided, should be carried alone at night when no one was around. It's very strange. There could always be someone coming out of the neighboring apartments or neighboring houses, no matter night or day. When the apocalypse comes, the power grid will be extremely unstable. That's where a generator comes in handy. He also purchased enough fuel to keep it running for a year, at least enough to last that long. When the apocalypse comes, the heating system will stop, so he decided that he needs to retrofit the house for off-grid heating. Therefore, the doors and windows also need to be reinforced. The modification of the house is done. Also, the guy decided that he will need a separate room for storing the supplies that he has procured. So he made such a room where he stacked all the supplies. By the time he had prepared everything he could, it was already July 14th. Just one day before the temperature plummeted. The next step, after careful preparations, he chose another major event as the next step to study his newly appeared abilities. To survive the coming glacial apocalypse, relying only on the supplies he was able to get, with the help of numerous credits, would not be enough. Be careful with the credits, he doesn't have to pay them back. His new ability to manage plants is his only hope of surviving this apocalypse. He made a plate of soybeans. All these soybeans he grew himself using his new ability. It wasn't easy for him. It was all so random. He still hadn't figured out how to activate his ability. It was time for the tasting. It was time to taste what he had made and see if the beans grown with his ability were even edible. Han Feng ate a little more than half a plate of beans. The Manhwa could have ended here if he'd just gotten poisoned, and we'd have said goodbye to the protagonist. Just as he thought, it turned out to be edible. All this confirms his hunch that this ability can produce food. The next step would be to figure out how he could use his new powers. So far, he has tried using the green hand on soybeans. He hasn't tried it on anything else. So he decides to open the refrigerator and see how it reacts, and if this ability works with other plants. The day passes, and it is already evening. The guy slowly opens his eyes, and in his hands is his plant. It looks like he has passed out. He has a headache. There are vegetables scattered everywhere. He never got to finish the remaining beans in his plate. But he does suggest that this ability is taking a serious toll on his body and mind. It's time to replenish his strength, so he decides to finish the soybeans on his plate. All this experimentation has allowed him to learn something about his new powers. Before his brain shut down, he tried using the power on many different plants. The ability worked in strange ways and didn't work on everything. Some plants didn't respond to his exertions at all. Some plants grew from seeds into full-grown plants, like soybeans. Some plants seemed to show their temper and literally exploded, causing him to fall to the floor in surprise. After such plants explode, they turn into substances that look like charcoal but are very light. All these black substances that looked like charcoal could be used for heating. So it couldn't be called a complete failure either. Now he could not worry about freezing, since he would try to create these charcoals in case of anything. After that, he tried many times, even trying to concentrate and control his breathing. And sometimes he had a successful attempt, which couldn't help but make him happy. However, the probability of success was too random, and afterward his body would recoil and he would pass out. There was no way he could find a pattern. There must be some principle by which his ability worked. The only thing he finally managed to understand was a small part about how to activate his ability and what it required. From his many experiments, he found out that the key is in his mind. First, he needs to visualize himself in nature. His body and consciousness must be one with nature. And so, when he opens his eyes after that, he may find that his hand lights up with a green light. So the ability is connected to his mind. It's about time to test not only with plants, so he has prepared fish, meat, chicken, and other such animal products. This time he decides to try the same trick with meat and places his hand on it with a green glow. However, no reaction followed it, even making him wonder that it seems to only work with plants. He makes another attempt, hoping that something will finally work, but again, there was no reaction. When he meditates, he feels two different colors. He hasn't tried red yet, so it's time to try red. Closing his eyes, he asks the red light to show him what he can do. The meat seems to respond to the red light coming from his hand. The piece of meat begins to bubble. Opening his eyes, he only noticed that that perfect piece of meat that was in his hand a while ago had turned into something horrible and obviously not edible in the slightest. With a cry of horror, the guy throws that disgusting substance, which used to be meat, on the floor. After cooling down a bit, Feng decides to examine the disgusting piece. It turns out the meat reacted to the red light. It feels like the meat is cooked or something. All of this leads him to ask more questions. What does the red light do? Is it heating it up? Furthermore, as he examines what's left of the meat, he makes the assumption that it's all more like a decomposition process. Then he had one interesting thought, which he decided to test urgently. He took some soybeans in his right hand. If green light, according to his idea, represents development of something, and red light, on the contrary, represents destruction, then what would happen if he decided to combine the two? Which he's trying to do as he's saying this. Suddenly, that disgusting and inedible piece of meat incredibly increased in size. Looking at his right hand, Feng notices that there are no soybeans, so where could they have gone? And then he realized that they seemed to have merged with the meat. It was a good time to scrutinize and sniff the product. It was too incredible for him, because the meat in his hands looked, felt, and smelled exactly like real meat, though no, even fresher. With all the success he's had before, he decides to build on it and do it all over again. But to his surprise, like a fool, he ends up only ruining the meat, and it doesn't work out. It's not that simple. Eventually, he sits down on the floor and decides that he will leave it all for now and deal with it all later. Today seemed like an incredibly productive day for him. If only he could comprehend this power. Then he would be the man standing on top of this apocalyptic world. The boy is immersed in his dreams and fantasies. He even imagines himself as a Superman. However, he immediately comes to his senses. After all, food will not help him. He is completely defenseless. While he was gathering the food he had recently experimented with, all he could think about was that he needed to find something to defend himself with before the temperature started to drop. At the same time, it was already snowing outside the window. It was time for the apocalypse he'd been preparing so hard for lately. The temperature will drop 45 degrees this week, and he needs to get a gun, and fast. However, such a purchase is not too easy, because he has no ties to the underworld. Suddenly, he hears someone loudly saying that he is in the construction business and has millions on every project. There turned out to be a blonde guy asking someone if this stranger had heard of Lao Wang, who was from Lida's group. So Lao Wang is like the blonde guy's older brother. Han Feng seems to have seen this guy who has an exaggerated style in fashion. Here they call him Homeless Joe. Li Ziyi, everyone around here calls him Brother Li. He lives in the same neighborhood as Han Feng himself. As he knows, Brother Li is in charge of contracting projects and seems to know everyone in the neighborhood. The man offers the man a smoke, but he only smokes a particular brand, and the others give him a bad cough. The man asks what he does. Li's brother replies that he's helping his big brother with a project, and that he said he'd take the guy to a sauna to show his gratitude. The guy doesn't have a regular job, but he always looks so busy. To give you an example, he tells the guy on the phone that his brother finalized a deal the interviewer was asking for 20 million. Turns out the caller wants another one for 10 million. So Han Feng for some reason decides that maybe the guy has connections to get him what he needs. Han Feng walks up to the blonde guy and greets him good-naturedly, which puzzles the guy. Do they even know each other? Han Feng immediately corrects the situation by saying that he's Xiao Han and that they met recently and doesn't his brother remember him. Li decided that he remembered him. He's been busy with work lately, so he asks not to blame him for his poor memory. He also asks what he can do to help. Looking around carefully, he walks over to Li and then whispers in his ear what he needs. The blonde guy is infuriated by this and asks why the guy needs it. Han Feng, on the other hand, feels incredibly embarrassed at this point. It's not every day you buy something like this. Li explains to Feng that maybe he doesn't understand something. Then he will explain it to him now. They don't do anything illegal, and Li hopes he understands. After all, it's a serious business. Of course, he has some connections, but he's not going to involve Feng in anything dangerous. Han Feng apologizes and says he was misunderstood. He needs it for personal use. He wants to use it for self-defense. And he tells a story about how he was riding his bike to work one day and ran into a man who was spitting in all directions. That's how the man spit in Han Feng's face. When he decided to ask the man for spitting and ran into him, the man spit at him again. He ended up beating up the big man in this story. However, the man, before he left, promised that he would come back. And he left with his tail between his legs. The next day, the man was waiting with his buddies for Han Feng. They beat the guy up and told him that if they ever saw him again, they would beat him up again. He had never been as humiliated as he was that day. That's why he wanted to have this item for self-defense. That's how the story turned out. However, what pissed Lee off the most from this story and seemed disgusting was that the man was spitting at someone. After all, this is completely uncultured behavior. Han Feng thought that the guy seemed to have misunderstood him, but Lee asks Han Feng not to say any more. He understood everything and will call his big brother right now. He'll do it for Xiao Han. The guy thanks Lee for that. Lee offers to take the bus because if it wasn't for the repairs to his Porsche Panamera, he would have driven him himself. Han Feng tells him not to worry and shows him the car he recently bought and that they'll take it. In the car, Lee is very excited. He even thinks that Han Feng is living well. He also wonders how much the car cost. When he gets the answer that the car cost 7,000, he says that Han Feng bought it at a very good price. Even though Lee was taking selfies in such an expensive and nice car, he was actively watching the road, since he said when Han Feng should turn left. He liked the photo a lot, so he immediately posted it on his social media pages. Meanwhile, at the place they came to, people are complaining that the weather has completely turned bad. Overnight, the weather turned from summer to winter. Strangely, despite the cold, they decided to sit outside. They made a small fire. Suddenly, they noticed someone arriving. They immediately recognized Lao Li, and they asked him what brought the guy here. Li says that they will go straight to Boss Liu's place, as they have some things to settle, asking in return if they are going. When the men notice they've pulled up in a new SUV and ask where he bought the car, Li replies that he didn't pay that much, just 700,000. Han Feng even remarks that Li says it's his own car in front of the real owner and what a brave thing to do. When they entered the building, the boss came out to see them. Who wonders why Chatty Li came to see him so late? Lai explains that the guy who came in with him wants to buy something from the boss, a weapon. Han Feng is pretty scared after all. He's never encountered the underworld. But to his surprise, the boss wasn't too pleased, so they only came to buy weapons. And he thought they were going to bring him something interesting. The boss called out to the handyman and he immediately responded and brought the weapon. The price of the coveted weapon was 6,000. But contrary to that, Han Feng says that it's a bit different from what he would have wanted. He wanted something long that has a scope. The boss is a little pissed off. Does Han Feng really want to purchase a sniper rifle from him? What does the guy think the boss has a mole? Like the guy thinks he can get whatever he wants here. He's told to take what he's got. If he doesn't want it, he doesn't have to take it. Li intervenes, tells Boss Liu there's a reason for all this. And he starts telling his story. That it started 5 years ago and Han Feng's wife. During the time he's telling this story, it's getting dark and cold. In the end, the boss is furious because it's so damn disgusting. Han Feng has 3 kids, and none of the kids are his own. This really pisses the boss off. Even Han Feng points out that the stories Li comes up with are ridiculous to the point of ridiculousness, and getting more and more ridiculous. The boss assures him that the sniper rifle will be there, he can make it happen, but it might take a few days. Han Feng thanks the boss. The boss asks a subordinate to organize everything. Li, on the other hand, notes that it was just like he told him before. Everything will be done in a matter of minutes. In the end, after all this, the boss still gives the guy the original offer as a gift. Since Han Feng was given a gift, he decides to give a gift in return. So he tells the boss that his friend works for the government and told him that due to the abnormal weather, the government is going to limit the purchase of supplies in the near future. So it's best to stock up on everything you need in advance. The boss looked at Han Feng with suspicion. Then he said that he had heard him. Then they decide to go first. But the boss tells Li to fuck off. He's annoyed just by seeing him. Li starts taking credit for everything going well because of him. That his big brother was in a good mood. He even asked him for one, and the boss gave it. Han Feng isn't exactly ungrateful, so he thanks Li and promises to buy him something. But Li declares that he's clearly misunderstood. He's doing this because he likes helping people, and Han Feng should know that. But if Han Feng insists, then these are the ones he needs, because the others make him cough. No need to go crazy, and 7 or 8 packs will suffice. As soon as he gets the money for his project, he'll be sure to invite the guy to the sauna. The guy, on the other hand, is already immersed in his thoughts. He has the supplies. He has the weapons now too. At least he's ready for the first days of the apocalypse. Now comes the time when he needs to focus on learning his abilities. If he can completely solve his food problem, his chances of survival will greatly increase. Han Feng was too absorbed in his thoughts and didn't notice when he slipped and fell. Lee asks if the guy's okay, and Han Feng informs him that he's having some trouble with his leg and that it looks like he broke his leg. So he holds out his keys to Lee and asks him to take him to the hospital. But then it turns out that the owner of the Porsche Panamera doesn't actually have a driver's license, and without a driver's license, he can't drive. But he is an unrealistic inventor, so Lee proposes a plan to just pick up Han Feng and get there on foot. Han Feng doesn't like it, so he just offers to call a cab and pay for it himself. And we move to the hospital, where another girl asks Jiyeon to be careful since she's on the night shift. Jiyeon tells the girl to be careful too. Left alone, the nurse looks out the window and notices that the snow is getting heavier. Suddenly the phone rings. From the receiver of the phone, a voice asks the head nurse to come to the hall as they are short-staffed. It turns out Han Feng really did break his leg. The doctor reports that the guy has a closed fracture of the right tibia. The doctor will prepare everything, and the guy will have to stay for an hour for observation. After that, the guy can take the medicine. The guy even realizes that this was bound to happen sooner or later. The important thing is that it's just before the apocalypse comes. Lai calls out Han Feng and tells him he has to leave. Lee still has a few deals left, but if Han Feng needs anything, he can call him. The hospital is overflowing with patients, victims of accidents caused by the sudden blizzard and plummeting temperatures. Emergency beds were set up right in the hallways, a grim indication that conditions outside were worsening. Holding his X-ray in his hands, the boy thinks about how long it will take until he can get the medication he is entitled to. And then he notices the nurse, and not only him, the grandfather next to him noticed her even earlier. The head nurse arrived at the patient and began dressing the patient. Soon she is asked to see the patient, who the nurses have finished washing the wounds and is in bed. 5. The girl checks and notes that all vitals are stable, and 1 dose of glucose should be administered in 10 minutes. And if his heart rate drops below 80, we need to administer epinephrine. Han Feng, just seeing the girl, immediately turns off his brain. Nothing life teaches him. He notes that the girl is amazing. She's already a head nurse, and at such a young age, she struck him as an incredibly skilled professional who is kind to every patient. She is certainly very pretty, but the way she sits made him realize that she is too ignorant. The man who was sitting next to the guy was taking pictures of the nurse. Suddenly, the man called out to the head nurse. She walks over and apologizes, as they are short-staffed right now, and could she come over a little later and help him? The man, on the other hand, started complaining that his back was suddenly sore. His back had been hurting more and more lately. Could the head nurse take a look at his back and tell him what was causing it? The perverted man himself was about to take a picture of the girl. The girl apologizes again and says that the man needs an X-ray and there is no other way. The man wants to show her where it hurts and grabs the girl by the waist, as if it hurts here. The head nurse laughed because she is very ticklish. She advises the man to wait until he can be examined by a surgeon. The man tries to lower his hands, but Han Feng can't take it anymore and gives the old man a punch, causing him to fall to the floor. Han Feng apologizes. It's just the first time he's used it all. He then picks up the man's cell phone, saying it's probably not broken. The man yells at him not to touch it. The old man calls Han Feng a brat and demands that he give him the phone back now. Han Feng shoves the phone in his face with an obscene photo of a girl and says how brazen the old man is. He took a picture of a girl and started hitting on her. Let the old man give him at least one reason why Han Feng shouldn't call the guards to escort the old man to the police cell, where they love perverts like the old man. So the guy advises the old man to run away right now. Han Feng's phone is not going to give it to him, and the next time he sees it, his photo will go straight to the internet. The man puts all his thoughts aside and immediately tries to run away. The head nurse asks him to stop. But not at all what you might think. She only notes that the old man had told her before that his back was hurting. Then why did he run away so quickly? Guy is shocked. Do naive people like this girl really exist in this world? The guy is like a hero. He informs the head nurse that the old man is actually a pervert and was taking pictures of her under her skirt. The girl is shocked. She didn't even notice it. Han Feng decides to give her the phone and let her decide if he wants to erase it all or call the police. Besides, she should be careful that perverts like this old man don't take advantage of her kindness. The head nurse thanks him and then wonders if the guy had an injured ankle. And then the guy feels a monstrous pain. Eventually, the girl bandages his leg and wonders if it hurts now. The guy thanks her and confirms that nothing else hurts. She informs him that actually she should thank the guy, and vows that she won't let bad guys like the old man get away again. Han Feng agrees and asks her to try to be more aware of her surroundings, although deep down, he realizes that she doesn't realize when this is happening at all. But they're interrupted, so the head nurse is needed urgently and she's called in. She informs him to remember to come back in a week to check his ankle. The guy is even a little sad because to come only in a week, which means he probably won't be able to see this girl again, and then leaves the hospital. The next day, the streets seemed even colder. There were fewer and fewer people on the streets. You don't want to go out at all in this weather. Han Feng, on the other hand, is watching TV, where the program was interrupted by the breaking morning news. The news anchor announces that in the next 24 hours, heavy snow and a sharp drop in temperature are expected in all regions of the country. According to foreign correspondents, temperatures are plummeting around the world. Dubai, Egypt even showed Amazon basin. Meanwhile, the woman continues that the country's experts, together with experts from 46 other countries, are rushing to the UN to discuss the cause of the weather anomaly. Experts say that the severe cold will not last long, but the girl advises to pay attention to the warning of natural disasters in the regions and follow the measures that will be taken by local authorities. Also, the news anchor asks to remain calm and not to believe rumors, as well as not to spread them, and of course to refrain from stockpiling supplies, because it follows that there will be an artificial shortage of food. And lastly, she says that the trouble will pass. Han Feng, on the other hand, is in the warmth while everyone is freezing. He sighs and says that once again the government is lying through its teeth and only feeding them promises so that no one panics. If he hadn't died once and then come back to life, he would definitely believe them. One might also note the robe Han Feng is sitting in. Given his situation with the apocalypse and the robe with Einstein's equation, as well as his drink in the glass, you could consider it a reference to another very prepared character for the apocalypse, Senku Ishigami from the Dr. Stone anime and manga. This time, he's not willing to believe the government and their excuses. His supplies are fully stocked, the house is fortified, and the heating system is also ready to go. Everything is ready for him to successfully survive the apocalypse. He doesn't have to worry about his survival. Suddenly, a notification came in, so he opened it on his phone, and it turned out to be a group of residents of his apartment complex. Liu Bing wondered if people had seen the news and that it was snowing in Egypt. Wu Kuan-Yu has never seen snow in June. Jin Taiyan is freezing to death and can't leave the house. Xu Yi complains about his boss for telling all the employees to work from home. Liu Yan, on the other hand, complains that it's snowing harder and harder. Han Feng is surprised that everyone in his compound is talking about it. Suddenly, a man with the nickname Mysterious Person bursts into the chat room. He draws attention to himself, for he reports that the blizzard was not caused by normal weather conditions, but by something within the Earth itself. He asks you to memorize his words that this is no ordinary blizzard, and also that the glacial apocalypse is about to begin. Han Feng is too shocked by what he reads. He has too many questions in his mind. What does glacial apocalypse mean? Who is this person? And also the most important question, how does this person know about the apocalypse? Han Feng thinks he needs to be on his guard against this mysterious person who talks so confidently about the apocalypse. Next, the complaints and questions to the apartment complex managers began. One person asked to clear the snow near the house, as he cannot drive his car out. Another person confirms this claim because he wants to go to the supermarket for groceries and pays for the maintenance of the house for nothing. A third person also demands that they hurry up and clear the entrance to the complex. Otherwise, the supermarket will be empty and they won't be able to buy anything. The fourth person says they are crazy to demand this, because it will be of little use, as they will not be able to go anywhere further than the neighborhood. The second person wonders what they should do then. It's so cold outside, they should walk there. The fifth person supports he does not know how long this snowstorm will last. He also heard that everyone is going crazy and buying up supplies. So if they don't go there now, it will be too late. Next, we are plunged into an animated chat of a group of residents of the happy apartment complex. A resident wonders where the property agent is and demands that he come out to them immediately and explain himself. The animated property managers report that they apologize to all the owners, but the blizzard is very severe, so there is nothing they can do about it. Residents are outraged. What's the point of paying the management company if they can't even handle such a small matter? And they also demand that the management company return the money for the maintenance of the property. Han Feng in the form of an animated cat, only thinking that this fight is so pointless. Because this blizzard is not something humans can handle. That's when the very hero, the owner of one of the apartments, Jang Shuiyu, shows up and tells everyone to stop arguing. Because the snowstorm is so bad that even if they clean everything up, there will be exactly the same snowdrifts in a few hours. And instead of complaining and arguing, if everyone helped clear the road, they would have been able to go outside a long time ago. He explains that property managers are human beings too, so they can't do anything in front of such a natural disaster. So they're just taking their anger over the situation out on regular people. People are still not happy. Some resent who he is and why he is lecturing them. Others ask if he is the owner of the apartment, and then why is he speaking on behalf of the company management? Is he part of the real estate management, in fact? The man denies his connection to the management of the company. He just speaks objectively and realistically. After all, what is the point of cornering the management company, as this issue will not be able to be resolved? Therefore, the residents will simply not be able to get the desired result from these claims, and will simply waste time and effort. The residents are still outraged. Since they are not allowed to demand anything from the company, then why doesn't this arrogant man tell them what they should do? Maybe this man wants them to starve to death. The man replies quite calmly that it's basically impossible to drive a car to the supermarket. Even if they clear the roads in the neighborhood, no one can guarantee that the roads outside the neighborhood will be clear. Therefore, his suggestion is to walk. If everyone agrees, he will go down and help the management company clear the paths. Han Feng has memories of this apartment owner, Jang. He was a very active person in his past life. Another tenant complains that everyone's getting fed up with him. And is it such a complicated issue to take so long to resolve? Those who want to go outside should clear the roads. Those who don't want to go out should just shut up. They've been fighting for half a day to clear the snow. They're just whiners. The guy leaves someone pensive and someone furious and leaves the chat room. Another cat appears, which given the clothing shown is Li Ziyi. He too, as a resident, is coming to help. We need to clear the roads quickly, because he still needs to accompany good brother to discuss matters of a few million. To Han Feng, this cat that appeared in the chat room reminded him a lot of someone he knew. Things are finally moving forward. The other residents have started to agree to go. Some are already running out of food, so they need to stock up for a few days. Another cat girl also agrees to go. She looks a lot like the head nurse, but it's probably not her. An old acquaintance shows up. She informs him that although she's been sick with the flu for the past 2 days, but since brother Jang is setting a good example, she'll come down too. Han Feng is not surprised by anything. Hyena seems to be going out as well. However, the others interfere. After all, there are so many men here. How can they let Hyena go alone? Let her just stay at home. After all, the girl needs to rest and recover. What can you do? Typical Hyena. Many men in the complex support her. So with great reluctance, she refuses to go out. She's sick. She thanks everyone for their concern. The rest of us will have to work hard to clear the snow. Han Feng leaves the chat room. He's not surprised by what happened, because as far as pretending goes, Hyena is really good at it. She pretends to be sick to everyone, but in the meantime, she texts Han Feng herself. The girl wonders what the guy is doing these days, and also he said he'll contact her, and so she's still waiting. And when he comes to visit her, have him buy her food from the supermarket on the way, and more food. She's waiting for him. The girl knows how to get hers from naive fools like Han Feng was in the past, so she even sends him a picture of her in one sweater. Han Feng isn't the fool anymore. Looking at the photo, he notes that Hyena is wearing too few clothes considering the weather, so she's just trying to seduce him. She's putting more effort into getting the guy to run errands. So he ponders on how she should respond to such a message. Eventually, he comes up with an idea and sends Hyena a message. However, Hyena is just furious at the message she received and taps even her foot on the phone and exclaims that that bastard Han Feng will still get his. Just let him wait. It's already the 3rd day since it snowed. The temperature is now reaching -20 degrees Celsius. In the early stages of the apocalypse, the central heating system was still working. Therefore, they still had internet in the apartment complex, so everyone continued to live their lives. Han Feng could also flip through various social media videos to pass the time. So little time had passed, and he was already incredibly bored. He even comes to the conclusion that the biggest problem of the apocalypse is learning to tolerate loneliness. To make matters worse, his leg isn't in the best condition, after a rather clumsy fall. It takes at least a few months for the guy to fully repair the broken bone. While watching various videos, he came across some science videos, where in the scientific section of the show tried to find out if there is a person in this world who has the ability to self-repair. It says that after doctors sewed up the wounds of a man who jumped from the 50th floor, they found that his internal organs and bones began to regenerate. So if viewers want to find out true or false, they'll have to watch this show next week. All of this makes the guy think he's an idiot for not thinking of this from the beginning. He then uses his newfound powers and applies the green light to his broken leg. However, there was still no reaction to the ability. Then he tried using the green light again. After all, he didn't give up after the first time, but there was no reaction again. Sighing, the guy concludes that it seems he was too deluded, as he thought that the green light would help his injury recover faster. He continued to phone and watch the video at this point, as he suddenly started to feel drowsy and fell asleep. In the depths of his dream, he looked like the leader of some tribe. On his head was a crown of feathers. The dream was very strange. The guy was walking sheep, but not all the sheep looked like regular sheep. Some had only a head and flew with the help of wings. The guy was merrily walking the flock of sheep that followed him. However, the sheep he was riding didn't seem very happy about it, so it throws off its rider. The guy falls unluckily and breaks his leg in the process. A small sheep comes up to him and starts licking the place where he was hit. But when the guy strokes the sheep in gratitude, the sheep is very unhappy about it. The sheep wraps its incredibly long tongue around his leg and lifts it into the air. The place where the sheep's tongue circled his leg suddenly starts to glow with a green light. And at the same, Feng comes to his senses and wakes up screaming. All he can think about is what a disgusting and horrible dream he just had. But when he turns his attention to his broken leg, it is glowing with a familiar green light. He tears off his bandage and begins to try stepping on the still recently sore leg. The leg doesn't seem to hurt anymore. Whether he can conclude from this that the green light helps self-healing during sleep, he does not know for sure. So he sets out to test his theory. Eventually his theory works and his finger on his hand begins to heal. This leaves a smile on his face because he seems to have figured out how it works. At the same time, the residents of the apartment complex are clearing the snow in the courtyard and the entire area. The most active man thanks everyone, because everyone had a hard time. He apologizes for bothering Uncle Liu because of such a heavy snowfall. As you might have guessed by now, it was Jang Xueyu. Uncle Liu points out that he didn't do much, and it's all thanks to the two Jin brothers. The girl fell in the snow, and the brothers immediately come over to ask if she's okay, and also to help her. But she tells them not to worry and thanks them. This is Jin Jiang, the same girl who was very active in the chat room earlier. The brothers decide to clear the main path first, and if the girl needs their help, let her call them. The girl informs them with undisguised enthusiasm that she will handle this section by herself and let them go. Jang Jueyu notices that the snow is getting heavier, so they will have to hurry up and buy supplies. The old man was reminded of something by the conversation about supplies. Jang Jueyu wonders what Uncle Liu is talking about, but the old man replies that it's nothing special that needs attention. He had heard that for the past few days, one of the owners in their neighborhood had been bringing supplies in a small truck, as if he was moving from house to house. Zhang Jueyu wonders if this is not a common thing, and that perhaps it is someone who has just moved, or someone whose house is in the process of being renovated. However, the old man saw gas cylinders and a fireplace. It doesn't seem at all like this is normal for a person moving into a house. And it's like this person is getting ready to get through the winter. That's what I mentioned earlier. It's impossible to do everything discreetly in such a short period of time. Even if you come and transport something at night, the neighbors will always notice the oddities. The brothers return and report that the main path has been cleared, and they will now be able to exit the apartment complex. The old man thanks them. Just then, another one appears who was busy clearing the lot of snow. He remarks that it is interesting that someone was preparing for winter, but he is interrupted by a huge snowball flying in, which hits him in the head. The girl asks the guy to stop slacking off, let him come back to her and keep working. Her name is Liu Yan. The guy is already too tired and he's furious, plus he now has a bump on his head from the blow. Apparently he did it all by himself, and the girl was watching from the sidelines. But the girl asks him not to point his finger at others when he speaks. Jang Xueyu intervenes and asks them to stop fighting because the main path is finally cleared. Everyone needs to stop and get ready to go to the supermarket for supplies. The resilient girl is still just as cheerful, despite being tired and cold. The brothers only think about what they need to buy. One of the brothers decides to ask his mom what to buy for her, because his mom also needs household goods. The old grandfather can't stop talking, so he asks Jiang what he thinks about it and whether it has something to do with the snowstorm. After a bit of thought, he tells his grandfather that he's not too worried about it. Because this is all just a short blizzard, it should stop soon. So everyone's life will go back to normal. So he decides not to think it's related. And even assuming this blizzard doesn't stop, if someone in the neighborhood has a huge amount of resources, isn't that a boon to the neighborhood? So don't believe anyone. This Jang Shuiyu, hiding behind his supposed kindness, has already contrived to forcefully take away the supplies for himself. The old man says that Jang Shuiyu is right. It turns out the young ones are really using their brains. It's not surprising. This particular old man is a complete jerk, blabbing such valuable information for nothing. Taking their umbrellas, backpacks, and other things required for camping, they went to the supermarket to go shopping. Jiang Shuiyu advises everyone to get in line and get ready to go out, and most importantly, not to push. The snow is getting heavier, so you should try to get back within 3 hours. Well, we go to another fool who directly shouts his location and does not hide at all. Someone wakes him up and asks him to open the door, so you don't want to, but you have to get up. When he opened the door, he saw Li Ziyi, who brought him what Han Feng had recently arranged with the boss. Li Ziyi also informs him that Brother Liu told him to properly thank Han Feng for sharing such valuable information. Therefore, it is also a gift. Thanks to his information, they have stocked up all the supplies on time. Han Feng, on the other hand, thinks that Brother Liu is too polite. Li Ziyi asks the guy if he has heard about the supermarket in the Eastern District. They went there today after clearing the snow, but someone had already emptied the entire supermarket last night. Han Feng is very surprised. They emptied that supermarket in just one night. So the same thing happened to the supermarket that happened during the apocalypse in his past life. Li Ziyi says he has to go and also advises Han Feng to wear more clothes. He still also doesn't know how someone secretly managed to empty the supermarket in just one night. So how did they manage to do it? In the comic books and novels he read, there are often people with superpowers who could transport things to another dimension. Only people like that could pull off a heist like this overnight. It's definitely impossible to deny such a thing, considering that Han Feng himself has the ability, so he wondered if a superhuman with such an ability could actually exist. He's feeling very uneasy, so he decides to investigate his ability as best as he can. And if other people really exist somewhere, at least he will have some countermeasures against them. Evaluating his current understanding and knowledge of his powers, he thinks that his ability affects all kinds of food supplies since he can increase their quantity and size. Taking some soybeans, he thinks about the fact that the probability of success as a result of his experiments is extremely low. The probability of success with soybeans is 1 in 10, while meat and meat products fail dozens of times. It makes him wonder why things happen the way they do and not work out the first time. In his hand, he still clutches the soybean. He uses his power, and the bean in his hand seems to explode and turn into something strange, resembling some kind of rock. Too often, his experiment fails. Han Feng's goal is to find out exactly how his power works today. Apparently, he's bored there, or he's been pushed so hard by the supermarket robbery. While he was doing his experiments, it was already night. The clock showed 22 hours and 45 minutes. He sat there all sweaty, tired, and covered in a pile of dirt left over from his failed experiments. But he finally seems to have learned how to use at least one part of the ability, and that was only on soybeans. He concludes that when using green light, the energy is not constant. Through his clever manipulations and numerous attempts, he has found out that each type of food has its own energy value. If he didn't get it right for each one separately, it would fail. That's how a soybean turns into something resembling a rock. That's when the thought crossed his mind that this pattern seemed familiar to him. It all looks like the same online dance game that was popular decades ago. This also leads him to think that he should try to follow this technique. If the energy values are like directional input keys, then the energy expenditure should be correct every second. It's a good time to try out his new theory about his abilities. He must determine the critical point beyond which he should not go. At last, all his labors and experiments have been crowned with the first success. The theory turned out to work after all, even if there was only one attempt so far. But it worked out perfectly. The next step is to test the theory and experiment with meat and meat products. Meat is different from vegetables, so it turns into a black liquid if it's not cooked. And this is just disgusting, and unnecessary spoilage of food is not worth it. Well, and clean up afterwards hard. Having decided that the principle of theory should not be strikingly different meat from vegetable, he decides to test. Having prepared chicken shanks and soybeans in advance, using red and green light, he began his experiment. The first thing to figure out was the energy value of meat. Meat probably takes longer to cook when compared to vegetables. The experiment didn't move that fast, and the first attempt predictably ended in failure, and he was splattered with black liquid. After that, he made many more attempts, but none of them ended successfully. It was always a failure. He only splattered everything around him with black liquid and wasted food. In the end, it all made him very angry. He even thought that the difficulty of doing such a thing with meat was too much. The entire apartment was already splattered with black liquid, and he was going to have a hard time cleaning up the mess he had made from his experiments. Han Feng decided not to give up and try to concentrate and calm down, and then carefully, following the strategy he had planned earlier, carry out what he had planned. After all these efforts, he was finally rewarded, for when he opened his eyes, he saw a huge ham. The strength immediately left him because the reserve of life force is not infinite, and the guy fell to the floor. It was hard for him. He was incredibly tired, but there was something he had finally achieved. He had finally found a method of synthesizing meat products. It was the 17th of July. The third day of the snowstorm has arrived. It is reported that the entire country is experiencing the worst snowstorm ever. A news anchor tells us that protective measures have been taken in all communities to ensure everyone has the standard of living they need. Also, due to the snowstorm, all traffic, electricity, and networks are starting to fail, so all citizens are asked to wait patiently for maintenance. And it is notified that the government is also providing resources to the affected regions, so the government hopes that everyone can stay at home, unless there are any urgent circumstances. Han Feng, on the other hand, is lazily stretching and warming up, all of this happening just like in his previous life. Soon, everything will start to fall apart. Han Feng's phone received a notification from the group chat, how someone called the government phone number, but his call didn't go through. He notices that people in the group seem to be fighting again. And we, along with Han Feng, are off to group chat once again. The guy notices that there is some fighting going on. Many people have been watching the news. Some people believe in waiting for support, while others are fighting, thinking about how they can save themselves. Then an old man who doesn't keep his mouth shut shows up and asks if everyone believes the news and that they will be rescued. Uncle Liu informs that if the situation was really under control, as the news said, then a support team would have arrived long ago to help them, but so far they haven't seen a single truck filled with supplies coming to support them. Those same completely unfictionalized stories from my grandfather begin. How he had heard his friends say that a lot of armored vehicles, tanks and heavy weapons were heading towards City A, so that there was only one possibility left, and that was that war was about to break out. With these words, he only further encourages other residents to panic. If he's not acting according to the plan of that guy with glasses, Zhang Shuiyu, then Grandpa needs to be hidden somewhere. He's definitely got sawdust in his head, stirring up panic in an already difficult situation. This is what happens, only to cause even more panic among the inhabitants, who think that their lives have come to an end. Han Feng, having read the message that war will break out, remembers that it seems that something similar has already sounded in his past life. Of course, Zhang Shuiyu shows up and informs everyone that if Uncle Liu's assumption is correct, they should start taking measures to save themselves. He also informs that there are already several apartment owners in the neighborhood who have already run out of food because they didn't stock up enough. In addition, no one has a confirmed time when the support funds from the government will arrive. Therefore, he suggests that everyone get organized and help those tenants who are facing difficulties. He suggests that tenants who have enough food donate some of it to support those tenants who have run out. He even sacrifices himself and is willing to give half of the supplies to those who need it. Therefore, anyone can turn to him for help. He can put on as much of a show as he wants in front of his audience, but we know why he's playing this game. If he doesn't know Han Feng's name and apartment yet, he's hoping to find out. Plus, we're never shown the face of the accomplice who arrived with Hyena in the first life in the apocalypse. It could have been Zhang Shuiyu, given his character, but there the man was dressed more like that grandfather. Is it really going to be like the Japanese videos? The curious slacker, already familiar to us, supports Jang and believes that they need to help each other to survive this crisis. After all, they can't let others starve in this cold. So if anyone wants to donate something too, it's fine with him. He decides that maybe Hyena can donate something too. However, the arrogant sponger is just furious at such an offer. She doesn't understand why he decided to ask her, the goddess, instead of asking others. Did he hold a grudge for her not agreeing to go out with him when he called her out? It seems that the once luxuriously living sponger, things are actually deplorable now, if you look at what's on the table in front of her. However, in chat, she is more reserved and tries to maintain her good-natured image. So she apologizes and informs everyone in chat that she is low on food. Those who hope for something in a relationship with Hyena support the girl, and are outraged that the guy hit on the girl when the girl is already low on supplies. Upon hearing this, Wu Kuan-Yu parries this attack by saying that he didn't know that. He hopes that the other neighbors can unite. He will not donate food if there is no cohesion. The others agree with him, as no one wants to be at a disadvantage. The others began to think about this information and come to some sort of agreement. Eventually, many began to agree. Many residents confirmed that others could count on them. Someone even inquired about the fact that maybe someone needed clothes. Someone mentioned that he had medicine at home, so whoever needed medicine could come to him. Zhang Xueyu thanked everyone on behalf of those in need. After all, so many people have volunteered to help. He even suggests appointing responsible representatives from the residents, create something of a temporary emergency committee that would be responsible for coordination and support. Han Feng even smirks when he learns from the chat room about the creation of such a committee. Since before his rebirth, something like this was also created, and this is nothing but a way to cheat those who donate food. July 19th, the 5th day of the end of the world. The temperature outside dropped to -40 degrees Celsius. The extreme weather conditions caused the heating system to shut down. Everyone was looking for a way to stay warm and keep warm. Some put on all the clothes they could and wrapped themselves in many blankets. Others threw their books into the fire in the apartment. Just like in Han Feng's previous life, the situation was only getting worse. All these events had no effect on Han Feng himself, who had prepared for such a situation in advance. So his apartment was warm. He had a cool cola and a cake with cream and strawberries. He had plenty of supplies, and he wasn't hungry or cold. Suddenly, a bell rang, which distracted him from playing on his PlayStation console. Provisions were actually very plentiful, and he wasn't even trying to save money. The call on his phone was from an unknown number. Han Feng decided to answer it. The caller said hello and was asked if he was Han Feng from apartment 1801. The caller identified himself as the representative of Building 8. He said that they were going to start clearing the road in 20 minutes. The representative asked Han Feng to come over to his parking lot after the cleanup to check in. Han Feng thought the representative had lost his mind. After all, there was so much snow, he was very reluctant to go outside to clear the snow. Also, Han Feng, after a while, contrary to what he said, got dressed and went down to the first-floor lobby. He changed his mind because he didn't want to fight with his neighbors yet. He even thought finally about minimizing the possibility of his apartment's secrets being revealed. However, looking out the window, he notices that the snow has almost covered the entire first floor. The other residents also saw this and became indignant, as the snow had piled up again, and they had only cleared the road yesterday. Another resident had never seen so much snow in his life. Someone suggested trying to open the door. One of the residents noticed Han Feng and asked him to come over and help them. With the three of them piling on the door, the men were able to somehow open the front door to the house. However, at the same instant, they were hit with an incredibly intense cold that made many people shrink away. There was too much snow, and the cold was monstrous. No one could even open their eyes from this kind of cold that no one had ever encountered before. Han Feng was all shivering from this kind of cold. Going outside in this kind of weather would sooner or later end in frostbite and maybe death. Someone points out that if they go out to shovel snow now, it will end in frostbite. Another man agrees, as so much snow would be difficult to clear. The third man thinks that only a fool would go outside in this weather. But suddenly, a brave man appeared in the doorway of the house and decided that he would go. That voice sounded familiar to Han Feng. Just as Han Feng thought upon hearing the voice, it was Li's brother. Li Zi calls the others a bunch of weaklings, and to overcome all this, one must have strength and zeal. The other residents of the house, knowing full well what kind of person Li Zi is, warn him that this is not a joke, and that this is not the time for bragging. The rest of the house agrees that they should wait until the snow is over. However, contrary to the opinions of the other residents, Li Zi rushed to shovel the snow even more fiercely. The guy managed to go deep into the snow, creating a small hole in the snow. Moments later, from this hole in the snow came a cry for help, asking to be rescued. Other residents of the house were able to pull the guy out of the snow. Li Zi's face was already blue. After Li Zi warmed up a bit, Han Feng asks if he is okay. Han Feng asks the other tenants to go to the parking lot and find the person in charge to mark their presence. He thinks that they should wait until the snow stops, and then they will have to decide what to do next. After all, now the amount of snow that has already fallen and continues to fall manually cannot be removed. Slowly, all the residents of the building moved from the lobby to the parking lot. Jang Jueyu informs everyone that there is indeed a lot of snow now, so they should try to clear the snow when the weather gets better. Jang Jueyu suggests that the underground parking lot be designated as a place to donate and distribute food. Looking at the speaker, Han Feng realizes that this is the Jang Jueyu from the chat room. It turns out he is the one who is heading the committee to deceive the residents of the house. Local Asian thanks everyone once again for their concern. Jang Jueyu supposedly didn't expect so many residents to want to donate their supplies. He assures that the residents' generosity has helped a large number of people in need, and he would like to thank everyone on behalf of the needy. The other residents are too naive. They believe that everyone should help each other in times of need. The old man believes that only by uniting together can they survive this crisis. Han Feng thinks that it's all nonsense because the disaster will not stop, so people who donate to the deception committee will regret it 100 times over. Li Zi decides to go back to his place. Li Zi informs Han Feng about it. Suddenly, Han Feng noticed the nurse who helped him recently. She carried the boxes and asked the others to spread out to the sides. Everyone was watching, but didn't give way to her for some reason. The girl had already started to fall, and the boxes were ready to fly in different directions. However, Han Feng arrived at the same moment and caught the girl and the boxes. Standing on her feet, thanks to her savior, the girl turned around to look and immediately recognized the guy. Alarmed and blushing, the girl immediately looked at his leg with sympathy and caution. The nurse immediately marveled that he could walk and that miraculously his leg was healed. Han Feng tries to find excuses and not to arouse suspicion, so he informs the girl that he just has good regeneration since childhood, and that his ordinary bruises go away in a couple of days. The energetic girl's eyes even lit up with interest. She thought it was cool. Han Feng offers to help the girl. The girl thinks the boxes aren't too heavy, so it's fine. Han Feng, however, insists, because he's a strong man, plus it will be a thank you to the nurse for the recent dressing. The nurse decided to agree after all, and thanked him for taking the trouble to take care of her. Han Feng took the boxes from the girl, and his hands were almost on the floor from the weight of the boxes from the girl. Barely carrying the boxes, he wonders to the nurse what she has in there. The girl informs him that the boxes just contain some medications for donation. The girl is so caring that she asks Han Feng if he's having a hard time. Let him return the boxes and she'll carry them herself. The guy even gets all flushed from such niceness, so like a real and stubborn man, he says that carrying the boxes is easy. The girl asks him not to pretend. She herself is much stronger than most guys. The guy wonders if she has some sort of innate strength. The girl seems to have had a hard life, for she denies superpowers since birth, and that there are reasons for the explanations of strength. Han Feng even thought about it, probably coming to the same opinion. The nurse apologizes. She wants to tell the guy something about something suddenly happening, but she can't explain anything herself. Finally, the girl wonders what the guy's name is, since she still doesn't know his name. Han Feng says his name, and the girl replies by saying that her name is Jin Shuo, and it's nice to meet the guy. Han Feng blushes all over after hearing the girl's name and seeing her cuteness. Qingjak wonders what Han Feng does in life. Han Feng immediately admits that he is a slacker. Jin Shuo is very surprised. Han Feng, on the other hand, doesn't understand what is so surprising. Suddenly, a man walks behind him who doesn't seem to be looking in front of him, so he pushes the girl. Jin Shuo swayed towards Han Feng and almost hugged him. The girl immediately took a step back and started apologizing. Jin Shuo and Han Feng both had red faces. Meanwhile, a sponger appeared behind Han Feng's back. Hyena can't wait to eat and savor everything the guy has, so she obviously won't let him go. And that's all for today. Thank you very much for watching the video. If you would like to see a sequel, please like, subscribe to the channel, and leave your wishes in the comments. You can also subscribe to Telegram to know about new videos. Bye everybody.